Let's get to cargo and Nestle.
Yeah, you're ready for this one. Well, if people haven't watched our show before, you might be unaware that Matt, Leck, and I are big opponents of the Supreme Court, an institution that has long shown its colors as not just an organization that doesn't stand for social justice and progress, but actually stands as one of the strongest bulwarks against social movements and progress in this country. I'll do my quick 45-second pitch on this. Every argument that you get from well-meaning liberals, right, that the Supreme Court is a critical institution in American democracy, is fixated on this one line, right, that the Supreme Court's job is to protect the minority from the tyranny of the majority. If you look at the actual record of the Supreme Court, you will find that that has never been the case. In fact, not only has the Supreme Court oftentimes been one of the cheerleaders of some of the worst aspects of American genocide and slavery. In fact, they have oftentimes increased the mandate of the federal government to enact these kind of crimes and atrocities, right? The minority that the Supreme Court has been willing to stand up for has always been the rich. And yes, are there some decisions that the Supreme Court makes that are positive? Sure. But it's always important to remember, especially if you consider yourself a Marxist, that these are not reflections of nine wise folks, but reflections of social movements on the ground changing the conditions around them. One fight that we are seeing right now that is absolutely critical is the fight for the fundamental right to abortion, right? And there is a very worrying reality that Roe v. Wade could get overturned, right? But look at the conditions even that brought Roe v. Wade into, into being. Across the country, social movements were demanding that this right be recognized by their state governments. That got it to such a point that the federal government, that the Supreme Court weighed in on that. And one of the difficult things about Roe v. Wade was that it basically suspended that fight over our head, right? Instead of like allowing those movements to expand and entrench this right, it codified it in a fairly conservative reading too. Roe v. Wade didn't say women have fundamental control over their bodies and no one has the right to tell them what to do. It said you have a right to privacy, right? So the point is that on all of these questions, right, there were social movements that forced their hand, right? And in a lot of ways, movements that have had to look towards the courts have unfortunately brought a lot of steam out of social movements. Regardless, while a lot of liberals are cheering today about the decision about Obamacare, right, which again is not a fundamental threat to American capital, it's been a great handout to the insurance industry. There has been another decision by the Supreme Court, which I think truly shows its colors. The Supreme Court threw out a lawsuit that alleged that two American companies, Nestle and Cargo, were participating knowingly in what they are calling human rights abuses, but let's call it what it is, child slavery on cocoa plantations in the Ivory Coast. And this was by a vote of 8-1. So despite the conservative bent of the Supreme Court now, after the GOP were able to steal a few justices, all of these other liberals were very happy to go along with this. And the argument is by the way, this was brought by 6 people, adults from Mali, who have claimed that as children they were enslaved in the Ivory Coast, and the conditions that they experienced were absolutely horrific. And it's undoubtable that Nestle and Cargill were well aware of the kind of activities that they were engaged in and what they were supporting, right? And this isn't, by the way, an indirect support. Like a lot of times you say like, oh, well, if you buy this, like, look at all the horrible things that this product does. And it's like, absolutely recognize it. But these are corporations that are like knowingly profiting and buying from sources that are using one of the most barbaric forms of enforced labor, that of children. The decision essentially, rested upon the idea that they have no standing in an American court of law, because of their lack of status as Americans, right? Despite the fact that the United States has shown itself time and time again to be a very willing participant in going after other, in seeing internationals and foreigners represented in their courts, if it's in the interest of capital. But when it is, just people who were enslaved in their youth, they don't have the time of day for them. And this was an 8-1 decision. An 8-1 decision. So all of the memes about these great liberal justices need to be put to rest, and this organization needs to be remembered and understood as what it is, which is a way for a ruling elite to be able to enforce their will on American democracy despite having no real meaningful checks on it.
Yeah, you mentioned that the Supreme Court of the United States is bad. Also bad is the Supreme Court of the United States blog.
Yes.
They said this. Now, do we say that Sonia Sotomayor and the other liberals supported child slavery by all voting for Nestle today? Of course not. And Nestle's lawyers like Neil Katyal obviously didn't either. The cheap attacks on the court and thoughtful lawyers did not age well. Let's just go back here to what my kind of lawyer says, respectable lawyer. Says, but they did support child slavery. They disregarded Nestle's domestic conduct and funding, training, and overseeing the slave plantations, classifying it as general corporate operations, which is a great euphemism, ripping the teeth out of the alien tort statute and preventing accountability to U.S. courts. She goes on. The Nestle opinion is repulsive and would have come out differently if the court wasn't full of pro-corporate psychos bred in America's major law firms. Worse yet, the opinion provides a roadmap for American importers to procure resources through slavery with legal impunity. Finally, I'm the first to admit the lunatic right-wing reactionaries on the court are a problem, but 9 liberal justices from Harvard and Yale won't save you from corporate domination of the law or repellent outcomes and demands. And one more just from Hez Bolsonaro. Another victory for Obama appointing Neil Katyal, brought to you all by 3 Democratic Supreme Court judges. Mm-hmm. And also, this is just right. Neil Katyal argued Nestle and Cargill cannot be held liable for abetting child slavery, noting that Nuremberg prosecutors did not charge the firm that produced Zyklon B gas for Nazis. So that is
incredible
law, American law.
What a tradition. And it should be noted that it was Samuel Alito who dissented.
Based Alito.
It's just like, throws a wrench in a lot of people's perspectives on these things. And look, I just want to...
Do you think, can I just say, do you think they just, pick names out of a hat? So, we can't go unanimously for this. I mean, we're all supportive of it, but we can't do it unanimously, or otherwise people are gonna just pick names. All right, Alito, see what we can come up with. Why do you agree with that?
I mean, but the thing is that I don't really like to do all these personal narratives for viewing politics, but it's only because the Supreme Court is such an insane personal organization.
It's like the divine right of kings. You need
because these people see their role as shaping the nation.
Yeah.
Right. So that is why you get some of these kind of funny things where there will be a conservative that, tends to rule in a way that you would consider to be, liberal, and vice versa. Right. And fundamentally, I'll make an argument that might piss off some of our legal friends out there, but if what you learn at these schools, especially the Ivy law schools, is how to make an argument within the accepted parameters of argument. Right. And in that case, that means, U.S., the U.S. legal system, right. The Constitution, blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's not people actually sitting here as arbiters of, right or wrong or anything like that. They recognize how they can use precedent, legal language, blah, 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 to get whatever result that they want. Right.
Which is, it's been law has been around since the middle fucking ages. And that's always what it's been. Yeah,
exactly. This kind of idea that we have these neutral judges out there who are just looking at the law and, being impartial is complete BS. And I just wanted to note that, if you look, for example, at a lot of the most egregious court rulings around things like, slavery or Jim Crow, all these other things, more often than not, the way that these systems were upheld were never so blunt as saying, "Oh, we're just like the United States endorses racism." It
Right.
was a lot of procedural stuff to say, like, "Oh, well, this person doesn't have standing in this court because of this and this and that reason," right? And that's essentially what this argument was, and just goes into a long line and tradition of SCOTUS ruling with the extremely rich and powerful, and in this case against some of the most marginalized people that you could conceive of. It's an absolutely despicable organization in this context, and it's a threat to democracy. For fuck's sake, like, take this seriously
Right.
and just give up this bullshit. I mean, especially liberals, this like bullshit worship of the impartiality of the court. At least the right wing understands what it is.
Right. Absolutely.
We need to eradicate this idea that this is not a political arena. And whatever I know some people like strategies of packing, blah blah blah. I say weaken its power as much as you feasibly can.
Yeah, it should be subservient to. It should not be an equal branch of government. To put it simply in Schoolhouse Rock terms.